Stanislav Petrov. In 1983, the Cold War had reached an extreme level of tension. The United States and the Soviet Union were on high alert, locked in an arms race with 45,000 Soviet nuclear warheads and 25,000 American warheads aimed at each other, ready to launch at any moment. Earlier that year, U.S. President Ronald Reagan had referred to the Soviet Union as the evil empire. Then, on September 1, 1983, the Soviet Union shot down Korean Air Flight Bo-7, killing 269 civilians, including many Americans. This further escalated the already volatile situation between the two superpowers. Adding to the tension, NATO had announced its Naval Archers 83 military exercise, scheduled to take place on November 2, 1983. This was a large-scale nuclear war simulation. However, Soviet intelligence suspected that it might be a cover for a real preemptive nuclear strike, prompting the Soviet government to stay on high alert and prepare for retaliation. In this atmosphere of heightened paranoia, the Soviet defense system was ready to interpret even the smallest threat as a serious provocation. On the night of September 26, 1983, Stanislav Petrov, a Soviet lieutenant colonel, was on duty at Serpukhov 15, a command center near Moscow. His job was to monitor for incoming American nuclear missiles and report any detected launches immediately. Suddenly, the Soviet early warning satellite system, GOCO, sounded an alarm. The system had detected a U.S. nuclear missile heading toward the Soviet Union. On his screen, a warning message flashed, indicating that an ICBM had been launched and was passing through the Earth's atmosphere. Moments later, the system reported that a total of 5 missiles had been launched from the United States. The control center went into a state of emergency. According to Soviet military protocol, Petrov was required to report the missile launch immediately. If he did, the Soviet leadership might have ordered a retaliatory nuclear strike against the U.S., triggering World War III within minutes. The fate of millions of lives rested on his decision. However, Petrov felt that something was wrong. If the U.S. had truly decided to attack, it would have launched dozens or even hundreds of missiles at once. But the system was only detecting 5 missiles, an illogical number for a first strike, and Soviet ground-based radar systems had not detected any incoming missiles. Only the satellite system was giving a warning. There was no clear reason for the U.S. to suddenly start a nuclear war. While tensions were high, nothing suggested an imminent full-scale attack. After analyzing these factors, Petrov made a bold and risky decision. He was convinced that the system had malfunctioned, and he decided not to report the attack to his superiors. Instead, he entered the cancellation code for the nuclear alert and reported. It appears to be a computer error. For several hours, the world unknowingly stood on the brink of nuclear annihilation. Eventually, it was confirmed that the alarm had been triggered by a satellite malfunction. The GOCO system had mistaken sunlight reflections for the launch flash of American ICBMs. If Petrov had followed protocol and reported the false alarm, the Soviet Union could have launched a full-scale nuclear retaliation, leading to a global catastrophe. After that, Petrov retired from the military and lived quietly near Moscow. For 15 years, his role in preventing nuclear war remained a secret due to Soviet government censorship. Finally, in 1998, after Soviet documents were declassified, the story became public. He was hailed as a hero worldwide and received several international awards, including World Citizen Award, a United Nations Commendation, the Dresden Peace Prize. Though he saved the world from potential destruction, Petrov himself did not see himself as a hero. In an interview, he humbly stated, "I was just the right person at the right time." His quick thinking and rational decision may have saved millions of lives, and perhaps even the entire world. Winston Churchill. In May 1940, Europe was engulfed in the flames of war. Under Germany's blitzkrieg, Poland fell within a month, followed by the successive collapse of the Netherlands and Belgium. Then, through its rapid advance into France, the German army succeeded in pushing the main forces of the British and French armies into the northern beaches of Dunkirk, effectively trapping them. As Britain faced the imminent loss of its main forces so early in the war, and with defeat appearing certain, the British War Cabinet was split into 2 factions. One faction, led by Foreign Secretary Lord Halifax, argued for peace negotiations with Germany through Italy's dictator Mussolini, who was still neutral at the time, believing that Britain could not withstand the damage it would suffer. The other faction, led by Winston Churchill, insisted that Britain should fight to the bitter end, even if it meant losing the homeland. Winston Churchill, the newly appointed Prime Minister of Britain, faced a critical decision. The Nazis had already conquered most of Europe, and Britain itself was on the brink of a German invasion. Amid this desperate situation, miraculous news arrived. The British troops trapped in Dunkirk had managed to escape, thanks to an unexpected German halt order whose reasons remain unclear to this day. With this turn of events, Churchill solidified his resolve for absolute resistance. He persuaded former Prime Minister and Conservative Party leader Neville Chamberlain to support him, successfully gaining the backing he needed. At a cabinet meeting, he declared, "If we attempt negotiations, that will be the end of Britain. The moment we engage in talks, Hitler will make even greater demands, and, ultimately, Britain will lose its independence and fall under Nazi rule." However, the cabinet remained divided, and a decisive statement was needed. Churchill firmly declared, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." This speech was broadcast to the public, and the British people reaffirmed their determination to resist Germany to the end. Under Churchill's resolute leadership, Britain endured the German air raids and ultimately emerged victorious in the war. Leopold Loyka. Europe today is a powder keg, and the leaders are like men smoking in an arsenal. A single spark will set off an explosion that will consume us all. I cannot tell you when that explosion will occur, but I can tell you where. Some damned foolish thing in the Balkans will set it off. Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck was right once again. It was 16 years after his death. A car sped down the road. Inside sat the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and his wife, Sophie. The streets were lined with crowds, and tension filled the air. That morning, there had already been an assassination attempt. A young Serbian nationalist, Nelko Kabrinović, a member of an anti-Austrian secret society, had thrown a bomb at the Archduke's car. However, the bomb bounced off and exploded under the car behind them, narrowly sparing Franz Ferdinand. Enraged by the attack, the Archduke arrived at the Sarajevo town hall and confronted the city's mayor, Fehim Kursic. "Is this how you welcome me with bombs?" he demanded. His wife, Sophie, intervened and calmed him down. After the formal reception, Governor Oskar Podgorek urged that they head to a military facility for safety. However, the Archduke insisted on visiting the wounded officers in the hospital. And everything began with a single mistake. Leopold Loyka, the Archduke's driver, followed the original route instead of the newly planned detour designed to avoid further danger. As they crossed the Apple Quay and entered Franz Joseph Street, Governor in the car suddenly shouted, "This is the wrong way. You've taken the wrong route." The driver, realizing his mistake, immediately stopped the vehicle. He attempted to reverse, but the car moved too slowly. At that very moment, a young man at a nearby cafe stood up. It was Gavrilo Princip. After the failed attack earlier that morning, he had been wandering aimlessly, unsure of what to do. He eventually stopped at his usual cafe for a cup of coffee. But fate brought an opportunity right before his eyes. The Archduke's car had come to a complete stop just a few steps away from him, at the perfect distance for an attack. Princip reached into his pocket and pulled out a pistol. 2 gunshots rang out. The first bullet struck the Archduke, the second hit Sophie. Franz Ferdinand was wearing a bulletproof vest, but fate was not on his side. The bullet struck him in the neck. According to the driver, Leopold Loyka, as the Archduke lost consciousness, he uttered his final words. "Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children." He slowly collapsed, holding his wife in his arms. That day, one simple mistake in navigation changed the course of history. Had the Archduke's car not taken the wrong turn, Princip would have never gotten another chance. But that small error became the spark that ignited World War I.